The mansion had been designed to silence the world. Thick glass muted traffic, velvet curtains swallowed sound, and the marble floors reflected nothing but wealth. To Jonathan Hale, silence meant control, and he valued it more than people. So when a knock broke through the stillness, his jaw tightened. He glanced at the clock. Nearly dusk. No appointments. No charity visits today. Annoyed, he crossed the vast foyer and opened the door without checking the camera. A woman stood there. She was small, almost fragile, her shoulders pulled inward against the cold. Her clothes were neat but clearly old, washed so many times the color had faded. Her hair was tied back carefully, as if pride mattered even when survival didn't. She wasn't holding a sign. She wasn't begging. Her eyes lifted to meet his, and Jonathan froze. They were a soft brown, familiar in a way that made his chest tighten. He felt suddenly off balance, as though the ground beneath the marble had shifted. "Sir," she said quietly, her voice steady despite exhaustion, "can I clean your house for a plate of food?" The words were simple, practiced, but her tone held no shame, only hope restrained by dignity. Jonathan's first instinct was irritation. He'd donated millions to shelters, foundations, and causes that bore his name. He didn't need strangers knocking on his door. He opened his mouth to refuse. Then he noticed the small scar above her eyebrow. A memory flashed. Rain, laughter, a woman brushing hair from her face decades ago. His breath caught. Impossible, he told himself. The woman waited. She didn't step forward. She didn't plead. Her hands were folded politely in front of her, trembling just enough to betray hunger. "I don't need help," he said, sharper than intended. "You should leave." For a moment, something flickered across her face. Not anger, not sadness, but recognition. As if she'd expected this answer long before she knocked. She nodded once. "Thank you for your time." Turning away, she walked down the steps barefoot, each step quiet, deliberate. No curse, no complaint. Jonathan closed the door, but the silence didn't return. Her eyes followed him into the house, into the shadows of memory he'd spent a lifetime avoiding. And for the first time in years, the mansion felt unbearably loud. Sleep refused to come. Jonathan Hale lay awake in his king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling where shadows stretched like long fingers. The house was quiet again, but the silence no longer felt comforting. It pressed against his chest, heavy and suffocating. Her eyes haunted him, not the hunger in them, but the familiarity. He rose before dawn and walked barefoot into his study, a room no guest ever entered. The walls were lined with awards and framed magazine covers, but he ignored them. Instead, he unlocked a small wooden drawer hidden behind his desk. Inside lay a single photograph. The edges were worn, the colors fading, but the woman in the picture still smiled brightly. She stood beside a much younger Jonathan, her hand resting lightly on his arm. They were standing at a bus station, laughing, unaware of how cruel the future could be. "Maria," he whispered. He hadn't spoken her name in over 30 years. The woman at his door had her eyes. The same gentle strength. The same scar above the eyebrow. Maria had gotten it during a fall the summer they met. Jonathan remembered stitching it himself, hands shaking, promising he'd always be there. A lie. Success came fast after that. Investors, cities, fame, and one day, he simply stopped answering her letters. It was easier than choosing. His chest tightened as a thought struck him with brutal clarity. Maria had been pregnant. Jonathan dropped into his chair, the photograph trembling in his hands. He'd convinced himself the child was never his. That belief had allowed him to sleep at night. Until yesterday. At sunrise, he was already in his car, driving through neighborhoods he hadn't seen since his youth. The streets grew narrower, the buildings smaller, the air heavier. Outside a soup kitchen, he saw her. She was on her knees, scrubbing the floor with a worn cloth, moving carefully, as if trying not to be noticed. No one thanked her. No one paid her. Jonathan stepped out of the car, heart pounding. "You," he said. She looked up, startled, but not afraid. "Yes, sir, I need to talk to you," he said. "Please, come with me." She studied his face, searching for danger, then nodded. As she climbed into the car, Jonathan realized something terrifying. The past hadn't come back to haunt him. It had come back to ask for the truth. The mansion felt different when Anna stepped inside. The chandeliers glowed softly, reflecting off polished floors, but she moved carefully, as if afraid to disturb the space. Jonathan noticed how she kept her hands close to her body, how her eyes tracked every object without touching anything. People who had never owned much always noticed details the rich ignored. "I'll start with the kitchen," she said quietly. Jonathan nodded, unable to speak. He watched from the doorway as she rolled up her sleeves and began cleaning with slow, practiced movements. She didn't rush. She worked like someone who had learned that care could make even unwanted tasks meaningful. Minutes passed in silence. The sound of running water echoed through the vast room. "Do you live alone?" she asked suddenly, without turning around. "Yes," Jonathan replied. The word felt heavier than it should have. She paused. "It must be very quiet." He swallowed. "Sometimes." When the kitchen was spotless, Jonathan gestured toward the dining room. The long table was set for one, as always. He placed a plate in front of her, steaming food, far more than he'd promised. She froze. "I only asked for one plate," she said carefully. "You should eat," he replied. "Please." She sat slowly, as if afraid the chair might disappear. Jonathan took the seat across from her, studying her face as she lifted the fork. Her hands trembled. Tears welled in her eyes, not from hunger alone, but from the shock of kindness. "My mother used to cook like this," she whispered. Jonathan's heart slammed against his ribs. "Your mother, what was her name?" She hesitated. "Maria." The room went still. Jonathan's fork clattered onto the table. His breath came sharp, uneven. "Maria Alvarez." She looked up, startled. "Yes. How do you know?" His vision blurred. He pressed his palms against the table to steady himself. "Did she ever speak of your father?" Anna nodded slowly. "She said he was a good man who got scared. That he chose a life that didn't include us." Jonathan stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the floor. He turned away, fighting tears he'd spent a lifetime suppressing. "Anna," he said, voice breaking, "how old are you?" 28. The number hit him like a verdict. Jonathan turned back, eyes wet. "Because 28 years ago, I walked away from Maria." Silence stretched between them, fragile and trembling. The truth sat on the table between them, heavy, undeniable, and waiting to be claimed. The silence between them felt endless. Anna's fork lay untouched on the plate. Her eyes searched Jonathan's face, as if trying to match the trembling man before her with the stranger her mother had described all those years ago. "You're saying," her voice cracked, "you're my father?" Jonathan nodded slowly. "I didn't know for certain. But the moment I saw you, something inside me recognized you before my mind did." She pushed her chair back and stood, shaking. "All my life, my mother said you weren't a bad man, just afraid." Her voice rose, years of pain surfacing. "Were we really that easy to leave?" Jonathan flinched as if struck. "No," he whispered. "I was weak. I thought money would make me brave. It didn't." Tears streamed down Anna's face. She turned away, pressing her hands to her mouth, trying to contain a sob that had waited decades to escape. Jonathan stood, unsure whether he had the right to touch her. Slowly, he placed his jacket around her shoulders. She didn't pull away. "I can't change the past," he said. "But I can be here now, if you'll let me." She laughed bitterly through tears. "I knocked on your door for food," she said. "Not a father." "I know," Jonathan replied. "And that's what shames me most." He gestured around the dining room. "All of this, it's empty without someone to share it with." Anna finally met his eyes. "My mother died believing you were somewhere living a good life," she said softly. "She never wanted revenge. She wanted peace." Jonathan's voice broke. "Then let me honor her by doing what I should have done long ago." He slid a folder across the table. Documents, resources, possibilities, but Anna pushed it back. "I don't want your money," she said firmly. "I wanted to be seen." Jonathan nodded, tears falling freely now. "Then stay," he said. "Not as someone I owe, but as my daughter." For a long moment, Anna said nothing. Then she stepped forward and embraced him, hesitant, uncertain, but real. For the first time, Jonathan Hale understood the truth. Wealth could buy houses, silence, and power. But redemption had to be earned, one brave moment at a time.